More stars. This is a really big picture. You don't understand? I need more stars. Where's that Milky Way I ordered? What's the matter with you people? Hi. I'm, Mel Brooks. I'm making a teaser trailer for my brand new motion picture, Spaceballs, the movie. It's going to be playing all across America next summer. I'd like you to play this teaser trailer in some of your better, bigger theaters. I'd like you to play it at the candy counter. That's where everybody hangs out. Anyway, it's a terrific teaser trailer. Why don't we take a look at it together? Space? Just space? Where are the balls? Now you got it. Right! At last, Spaceballs, the movie. Coming June 26th. To a very big theater near you.
Okay, you watching? All right, Mel, they're ready.
Mel Brooks, who hung the Western high in Blazing Saddles and electroshocked the horror film in Young Frankenstein, has assembled two generations of comedic talent in Spaceballs and supported that talent with an army of the top artistic and technical people in Hollywood. On the set, he works with a seemingly boundless energy that is supposed to belong only to youth. For in addition to writing, producing, and directing Spaceballs, he plays two starring roles.
Do I get this at the end of the movie? Do I get to keep this?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I can do Halloween? Mm-hmm. Spaceballs is about the last frontier. It is about space. It is the last genre that I can destroy, so I'm destroying it. It really is kind of a blazing space.
Hey, you hold them off. I'll get the door.
I'm not shooting this thing. I hate guns. My hair. He shot my hair.
Cut. It was great. It was great.
54.
You were wonderful. You were surprisingly good then. No, that was really terrific.
He's out
That
there,
was
you
a
know,
great
and if
take.
you miss a beat or if you
We
don't
have
know
two
where he's
takes?
coming from,
All right.
you're like, what is he talking about? What is he doing? He's crazy. But if you understand where he's coming from and after hanging around him, he's just so quick.
He's very approachable in a work situation, and he listens to your suggestions and guides you through a scene and gives you directions you wouldn't normally think of. You know, that's what makes him Mel Brooks, as opposed to somebody else coming up with those crazy thoughts.
He really is the master. There's no one like him to work with in comedy. People think that he's such a funny man and everything. Actually, with him, comedy is serious business. And as funny as he is, he gets very serious.
I'm learning a lot from this guy. Who I sit in dailies.
Get up there and go to work. Wow! Silence! Who dares enter the sacred and awesome presence of the everlasting know-it-all? Yogurt! Yogurt!
One of the actors Brooks must direct in Spaceballs is himself. He plays Yogurt, a galactic guru who dispenses wisdom with fruit at the bottom.
You're hiding me.
Heard of you? Who hasn't heard of yogurt?
Yogurt the wise.
Yogurt the all-powerful.
Yogurt the magnificent.
Please, please, don't make a fuss. I'm just plain yogurt.
His directorial duties extend to controlling the performance of the second character he plays, President Scrooge, leader of the Spaceballs.
I have a TV set. It's a TV monitor, right? And the TV monitor records the scene. So I act in the scene, and I trot over to the TV monitor, and I look, and I say, Mel, you stink. Let's do it again, folks. Take two. Didn't I tell you I don't like that thing down? Put it up. You look like a big black cockroach. Scares me.
Background.
You look like a big fat water bug. Raise that man. How do I know you're not making faces at me under that thing?
President Scrooge.
Yes. How do I know you're not making faces at me under that thing?
President Scrooge.
Yes. The monitor is an invaluable tool because it tells you exactly what's wrong with either the staging, the intonation, the rhythm, the interplay, and you got it.
Sir.
Yes. Oh. Never have that damn thing down in front of me. How do I know you're not making faces at me under that thing?
President Scrooge.
Yes.
There it is. Planet Druidia.
Ah, Planet Druidia.
You don't need that, Private. We're right here. Now, what is it?
When it came to the sophisticated realm of sound effects, Brooks would settle for no less than the state of the art.
I've lost the bleeps, I've lost the sweeps, and I've lost the creeps.
The what?
The what? And the what? You know, the bleeps, the sweeps, and the creeps.
That's not all he's lost.
Unlike most comedies, Spaceballs required many elaborate special effects shots, and they had to be first class.
He did it. What?
The special effects masters of Apogee Incorporated worked with Brooks to make his vision a reality. One of Apogee's principal tasks was to create and shoot the elaborate models found at the heart of any true space epic. Their computerized motion control system allowed technicians to move their camera in precisely defined patterns that would give the photograph models the illusion of motion.
What was that?
Hi.
What are you?
I'm a Mog. Half man, half dog. I'm my own best friend.
We had to bring out character, you know, we had to find the dog qualities. Obviously, we had the ears. But it was the hair we were very concerned about. The ears ride so high, dog's ears are up here. So mine are blocked off down here. I give myself big sideburns here on the side and a DA in the back with a ponytail. So I try to be a very cool dog with the soul patch.
Okay, we'll have to set her down. Prepare for an emergency landing. Vic, give me a reading.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will
Will
be
you
done.
stop that? Keep your seatbelts fastened back there.
We're gonna die.
My humor is kind of half wit,
Give me paw.
half physical,
Do you want some?
No.
A little hair of the dog?
No, listen, answer that thing for me.
half disgusting,
Pizza the Hut.
sometimes half beautiful. It's my appreciation of the human event.
Ludicrous speed. Go!
Every time I open my eyes, there's a guy here with a camera. Don't you have a home? Don't you have a diner that you hang out? You have coffee? Don't you guys talk to each other? You hate each other? Does the boom man and you, do you sit and you have coffee sometime? How about the director? Let me see your DGA card. You got your card on you? You guys, you're everywhere. The toilet's around here. I'll meet you there in 10 minutes. All right. Now, show me your card that you're allowed to point the camera at me. You got a card, too? Cameraman's card?
That's what he's the best at. He totally
See? Now that we're in a checking of a credential mood, I'd like to see the makeup people's card so that you're allowed to touch my face.
All right, please
Will
be
you
quiet.
give me a break? Anybody else got a card? Here we go. Nice walking. Can I go on with my movie now? Space. It's the new frontier. Why don't I wreck it? I've destroyed the Western. I have made fun of the horror genre. Silent movies have fallen under my axe. What haven't I spoofed? And I said, oh, I know. I know. Space. I am the keeper of a power known throughout the universe.
The Force?
No. The Schwartz.
I think Spaceballs being a spoof of science fiction movies, it makes it particularly poised to be memorable.
When Mel Brooks does a satire on a famous story, which he did with Spaceballs, it's very close to the original story, but it just takes a sort of a left turn so that it just becomes a little silly.
Well, I think the space genre was ripe for satire. No one had tapped into it yet. So you had characters easily identifiable.
All rise in the presence of Dark Helmet.
I sent the script to Lucas. I said, if there's anything that offends you, he called and he said, please, you know, I saw Blazing Saddles, I've seen Young Frankenstein. I trust your judgment.
I can't breathe in this thing.
As a matter of fact, ILM, which is a George Lucas company, did all our post-production film work.
Yogurt!
Hello, boys.
I think it's a spoof on Star Wars. I think. Are we through?
You cannot spoof anything that you really don't love.
There's so much product out there.
Laugh your butt off at something that we all know very well.
It's not hard to make satire of that stuff because it's bigger than life.
There's a very, very long spaceship that you can have fun with. I mean, it's almost like the beginning of a porn movie.
You had all those easily identifiable elements with those products. You know, you had the princess in distress, and you had aliens, strange-looking aliens. And, of course, you had good guys and bad guys.
I remember his approach to all the characters had a great deal of affection, you know, so there was never any attempt to really, like, have a character just be kind of a fall guy or something, or stupid just for stupid's sake, you know. And I think that side of it, I could see why he would say that, you know, you have to love what you spoof.
I think in order to take the energy and the time and all that goes into, like, the making of a film like Spaceballs, You must love it. You have to love it.
I've come to love Star Wars, Star Trek, except for Star Crap. I won't see Star Crap.
Ludicrous speed! Go!
Peter Donnan was so great in supervising all our special effects.
There was no question in Mel's mind that he wanted to do everything as well as or better than Star Trek, the TV series, Star Wars.
So everything was very real, very exciting, very space-ish, and I made it Jewish. I just tweaked it a little. A funny effect is really the real effect with some extension.
Everything does have to be as good, if not better, because you better show us that you're expert and you know what you're doing, because we're fans of the first one.
We actually set out to do really, really first-class work.
Perfect.
You were wonderful.
Thank you.
Let's do it again. Just do it a little better.
Mel is a very curious guy. He had seen Ruthless People, the first movie I did, and it's just a small part in it, and he liked it a lot. And then he and Anne came to this theater center, and I was doing a production of this very bizarre Belgian play.
I actually went to see a play called Barabbas, and Bill Pullman was playing Barabbas, and he was great. He had really serious acting chops.
He liked the performance and talked to me afterwards and then hired me.
When I went to meet with Mel, I remember thinking that, you know, I wasn't going to get this, I wasn't going to be right, and I wasn't, because I didn't think of myself as big slapstick, broad comedy.
And I had just seen Robbie Reiner's The Sure Thing, and she was terrific in it.
But he said playing it real or playing it straight is half of the comedy.
I know these space bums. They're all alike. Fat, ugly,
Bucktooth, knock-kneed.
fierce-willing pigs.
It was a social thing that I met Mel Brooks. He said to me, you know, you're not fat, but you have a fat man's face. We'll just pad you and everything because your face has got the right look for it. He said, would you want to do it? Yeah. I said, gee, that would be great.
I know very little about dot matrix and Spaceballs because I was called in as kind of a Band-Aid person. I was called in after Spaceballs was done. It was my voice that was used. Lorene Yarnell actually plays dot matrix.
She could move, she could do these robotic moves, great with her body, but she didn't have the right comic voice.
I got a call from Mel, and he said, how would you like to come in and write some jokes and do this character? And I said, great. So I knew nothing about, I didn't even know what the movie was about.
That was my Virgin alarm. It's programmed to go off before you do.
Before Spaceballs came up, I was doing Hill Street Blues, so it was quite a shift. I get a call one day from my agent saying, Mel Brooks wants to see you.
Every spaceship needs kind of an accountant mind, you know?
When Mel called me to talk to me about Spaceballs, he wanted me to come in and work with Rick. So here I had Mel again, and I had the potential of working with Rick, who I was a big fan of.
Fire a warning shot across her nose.
Rick was what you call a great pain in the ass. That is, he'd always finish a take, and he'd say, let's do it again in this next take. Why don't you say this, and I say this, and you say this? He was always right.
Careful, you idiot. I said across her nose, not up it.
And he was really, I say pain, but he was a pleasure to work with, because anybody who's so giving and loving and creative is very valuable.
What's his name?
That is his name, sir. Asshole. Major Asshole.
And his cousin?
He's an asshole, too, sir. Gun is made first class Philip Asshole.
How many assholes we got on this ship, anyhow? Go!
There were a lot of assholes. All the assholes were good. Everybody who played an asshole was wonderful.
I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.
Rick also suggested very early, when I was talking to him on the phone about the part, that John Candy would be a great barf. And I think he called John.
Hi.
Who are you?
Barf.
Not in here, mister. This is a Mercedes.
The spaceship crashes, and he gets caught, he goes back, and he ad-libbed, oh, that's going to leave a mark.
Yeah, well, normally oh, that's going to leave a mark.
And that was so, you cannot buy that.
My name is John... No, I'm kidding. Take two. My name is Peter Donnan, and I was the visual effects supervisor on Spaceballs. I had done a little bit of work on Star Trek, the TV series, the original TV series. I had worked for the trailer company that had done the trailers on Star Wars, so I was familiar with the work that existed and sort of what the benchmark was.
My name is Nick McLean. I was the director of photography on Spaceballs. We discuss angles, but nothing about film or looks. His main focus was it funny? He told me, Nick, comedy is bright. In other words, you have to see the people. You have to see their expressions.
He was admirably professional in every setup.
And he says, also, I'm Jewish and I pay for that wall back there. I want to see that wall back there.
He's very careful with Daphne Zuniga, who was Princess Vespa. He said, you know, a girl's got to be beautiful. And I said, I agree. That's why we go to the movies. Men got to be good looking, girls got to be beautiful. I never yelled at him for taking a little extra time to shadow her face properly and light her. As good a cinematographer as anybody could ever want. And good-natured. The only thing I didn't like about Nick was that he wore sandals.
What?
I'm Ben Nye. I was the makeup designer on Spaceballs. I was introduced to Spaceballs through John Candy and working with John Candy. I think he kind of went to whoever through his agents, and however that works, had me assigned to the movie. It seemed like a great opportunity to do some interesting makeup, so I was happy to be department head.
Do I get this at the end of the movie? Do I get to keep this?
Yes, sir.
It was a really joyously good experience on a professional level. I mean, we had Harold Michelson, who had been Alfred Hitchcock's storyboard artist. We had Nicky McLean as our director of photography, who had probably been, if not the greatest, one of the greatest camera operators was ever in Hollywood. Don Feld, a fabulous costume designer. Conrad Buff, who went on to cut True Lies. Terry Marsh, certainly a great production designer who had worked with David Lean on Dr. Zhivago. We just had the cream of the crop all the way through, and everybody was, you know, sort of joyously contributing to this experience that Mel had set us down the road on.
When you do a big budget movie, and this was a well-financed studio film, one of the wonderful things is that they're going to create these sets. They did a wonderful job of creating the Spaceballs world for us as actors.
Terrence Marsh, everything he designed, even the Winnebago or Princess Vespa's quarters, everything was correct and then just stretched out of shape, just a little bit, so that you'd be aware of the comic frame around everything. And it was great to shoot at MGM, one of the greatest studios. The gate, driving in, little goosebumps. Hello, I'm Mel Brooks, you're MGM. This is all good.
Wizard of Oz was shot in that Soundstage 39, where we shot a lot of our kind of Wizard of Oz scenes. And the fact that it was all going to be torn down and gone after we were out of there made it feel like it was kind of an important movie, even though it was kind of a silly movie, you know, kind of light entertainment. But it had this kind of sense of this was going to be the last chapter, a piece of history.
How did I do it? What did we do? Well, first of all, we did 267 shots. And I had long discussions with Mel, with Terry Marsh, with Ezra Swerdlow, who's one of the producers, about funny effects. And obviously, you know, a flying Winnebago is like a funny idea. The world's longest star cruiser is a funny idea. But the whole premise for all of it was more about making it so that they were amused by the ideas, not necessarily making the work crude.
The miniatures and the world of the miniatures was amazing.
For the bridge, we had what at the time was one of the largest blue screens anybody had ever attempted. It was 35 feet high and 135 feet wide.
There was this theory, and I don't know if it really was true or not, that the blue screen hurt your eyes.
They scared the hell out of us. They said, don't look at the blue screen. They gave us yellow glasses.
We had special sunglasses.
So we all were wearing yellow glasses. Turned out that that's a myth. I mean, it didn't mean anything.
When you act with a blue screen, it's literally that, a blue screen. And so a lot of your acting school training comes back.
That's what a good actor is. He acts to nothing.
The hardest thing was imagining all the stuff that was going on.
Eventually, there's going to be a spaceship there.
You just throw all pride out the window and you just react. And then you pray that they're going to stick in the right image at the right moment, because if they mess it up, you could look really stupid.
We had a wonderful costume designer, Don Feld. D-O-N, one word, Don Feld. Je suis Don Feld. Who the hell are you? And he was a genius.
A Hollywood legend. And so I went in and just was putty in his hands.
I was amazed at Don Feld's original sketches. And I said, don't go any further. Just nail these. Get these into costumes. And we stayed very close to his original designs. He was very creative in making a helmet that could strap on to Rick Moranis, where he could actually walk around with it. And it wouldn't hit the floor, it wouldn't throw him over it. He created the balls for Spaceballs, the ball helmets, and the wedding dress. And he was just wonderful with textures and with space elements. Everything would shine and be just a little too spacey, you know? He was a little spacey himself.
In real life, I have very little hair, and as you can see. But they gave me a wig. You know, it was nice for a bald man to all of a sudden have all his hair. I liked it.
It was the hair we were very concerned about, because the ears ride so high. Dog's ears are up here. So mine are blocked off down here. I give myself big sideburns here on the side and a DA in the back with a ponytail, so I try to be a very cool dog.
John wanted to have some appliance on his face to make him look like a dog. Mel said, we don't want to cover John Candy's face. We're paying all this money to see this guy who's really funny. He's got this funny face, and no, we really don't want to cover it up.
So I said, what about if we give you doggy ears and maybe a patch?
Funny.
We started out with the desert. And that was the first shooting I did, anyway, was out in Yuma, Arizona.
If you do more than one take in sand, you've ruined the pristine quality of the sand. So, I mean, it would drive us nuts. We had to get a blower, or we had to get a sand broom. Worse than that was lunch. There was nowhere in near Yuma to eat lunch.
It was hot and dusty.
I felt really badly for Lorraine Yarnell.
My God, Lorraine Yarnell had a trudge in the C-3PO mock-up.
She had a real tough time, probably more difficult than most, because she couldn't actually see where she was going.
And it must have been easily 120 degrees in that thing.
We'd have to keep opening the mask so that she could breathe, and she'd just be dripping with sweat. I mean, it was so hot out there. This poor woman, I think, lost a lot of weight and water weight. I mean, and she was tiny to start with.
She was a trooper. She was a real trooper.
I'll tell you the costume that I really enjoyed more than mine and was jealous of was Rick's costume, because of course Rick had the big helmet.
Everybody got that?
Rick would try and break me up just before we would do a take, but he'd drop the visor.
Never have that damn thing down in front of me.
So he could laugh his little tuchus off, and no one knew. And I'm ruining the take because I'm laughing, and all I see are his little knees shaking a little bit. That's all because his helmet was down. I wanted that helmet. I wanted that.
The people in the picture all had terrific sense of humor, and there was a lot of kidding around going on.
We had a lot of laughs making this film.
Sitting there with John Candy, who just goes off, and you're crying and you're cracking up, and makeup keeps touching you up, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, speed, rolling, and you're like, no, this isn't fair.
I thought Mel was going to get mad. I thought, you know, costing a lot of film here. We keep ruining takes. But Mel was laughing harder than anybody.
I forgave them. I forgave them all. I love laughter on a set.
And that's why I think Spaceballs works. We laughed more making that film than people laugh watching it. As much as they laugh, yeah, it was enormously funny and satisfying for people to work on that film. And that's Mel. Adjectives to describe Mel Brooks.
Good kisser.
My best friend.
Wacky.
Very funny.
Good kisser.
Concise.
Hilarious.
Wonderful enthusiasm.
Creative.
Lustrous.
My lover.
Slimy.
Bizarre.
Tall, dark, and handsome.
Very short man.
Good-natured.
Brilliant.
Somewhat mean.
Direct.
Knowledgeable.
Burps too much.
Great creativity.
Erudite.
Avuncular.
Insane.
Compassionate.
But a good insane.
Perfect.
I'm always the best. Well, I was the shortest.
He's very short.
Mel Brooks is everybody's favorite uncle. He's your uncle because he genuinely cares about you. He's involved in your life. You're part of a family when you work with Mel.
I like people. I give them advice whether they need it or not. Don't carry it that way. Hold it on your hip. You won't get a hernia. I help everybody.
It's great working with Mel. On the set, he's a very funny man, but he's very nice, very serious, though, on the set.
As a force of nature, Mel Brooks can be intimidating. But all in the nature of kind of really, let's not miss a moment of opportunity. Let's not be lazy. Let's not be self-congratulatory. You know, afterwards, I've looked back on it and I realized how much I learned from the movie. You know, about comedy, especially comedy in film as opposed to theater. You know, and he was so rigorous. That was something I really respect him for.
You know, a lot of people think I'm their favorite uncle because I appeared on television in Mad About You, and I played Uncle Phil. And when I played Uncle Phil, I played him with his hair up like this. And I would talk with a little Jewish accent and a voice, and I would be very energetic, and they liked that character.
Mel Brooks, I walked in thinking, oh, it's going to be working for a comic. And I walked out 8 hours later with such respect for him. The man is absolutely brilliant, knows his work, knows his background. He's wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
I remember very specifically how he interacted with me. Bring it up, make it bigger. If we have to sit and wait for you to find your motivation, we're going to be out of the theater.
And I yell at my actors, make it big, make it grand. I like it to be larger than life because an audience wants things to happen in a movie that could never happen to them. They want big, gorgeous, beautiful things. They can't dance like Fred Astaire, but they can dream of dancing with Ginger Rogers like Fred Astaire.
Mel, as a director, paid attention to everything that went on. Mel used to say, no styrofoam cups on my sets.
Never play this again.
Because in every single movie that he had ever had, somewhere in his mind, in the background, in some scene, there was a styrofoam cup that some grip, some electrician, some set decorator, some painter, some prop man had himself a cup of coffee and set it there.
That's the curse of allowing the crew to use white styrofoam cups. You'll always see them in the periphery of a movie.
So we had paper cups. So Mel was involved in everybody's job.
Mel's way of working involves a lot of improvisation.
No matter what preparation you do, no matter what rehearsals you have, it all changes as soon as you're in front of a camera.
He was really good about letting people experiment and explore.
It's not always the most important thing whether that improvisation works or not for that specific scene. What's important to the actor is that it's indicative of the kind of freedom you have. And the best part of that freedom is if it's not working, he's going to have some very specific ideas on how you do it.
If the director realizes what the writer had in mind and the actors can nail it, that's a lot better than improvisation.
Do it like this.
You kind of go to the set kind of wondering what the heck's going to happen sometimes. Usually Mel got his way.
Mel likes to do a lot of takes.
Many, many takes.
10, 12, 15 takes.
Lots and lots and lots of takes.
He's not cheap about it. He uses up a lot of film.
A lot of actors get anxious about getting line readings from directors. Mel gives you line readings, sometimes. I loved it because it was intimidating because he did it funnier than you were going to do it. That was the only problem with it.
When he gives you one, it's perfect. You should put it in your pocket and keep it there. Don't forget it, because it doesn't miss.
The key to my character, and Mel and I talked about this in the beginning, Colonel Sanders is second banana, which is a term most people understand from vaudeville days. You know, you set up the comedic character as a second banana. You bring the jokes to him on a tray. That's what I always think about when I remember Spaceballs, was how much fun it can be to be a second banana.
Hello, Lone Star.
Hello, Vinny. What do you want?
It's not what I want. It's what he wants.
Pizza the Hut!
Richard Caron played Pizza the Hut. He was inside this huge canvas-type thing that had all this actual cheese pizza over it. And to keep the pizza hot, they had a wire going through it, and it was bubbling. We'd shoot a scene, and Matt said, okay, we got to get ready for another take. And all of a sudden, I hear, smoke! I look down, and he's smoking. Smoke is coming out from the wire that was heating up the pizza. I said, Mel, fire! They pick up this whole thing, and he comes out, he's all, ah. Mel says, come on, one more take.
Mel played Yogurt, and when we were doing the scenes with Yogurt, he would say, okay, everyone, you know, get ready, set, speed, rolling, action. He'd do his thing.
The kids love this one.
And he'd say, cut, perfect, brilliant, move it on, you know. Of course, after, like, I tried that with my takes once after the end. He'd say, cut. I go, perfect, brilliant, move on. He'd say, perfect, let's do it again.
And for my part, I was, you know, young kid, and Mel wanted me to shut up all the time. But always with affection.
If you just aim for the place you're going, you'll fall short of it. You've got to aim beyond it to reach it. It's never as good as you want it to be. But then again, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. But you got to give it everything you got. You don't go to work, you go to art. It's your vision, it's your love, it's your hope, it's your heart. You give your soul to the film, and you hope that it lands on its feet and that people, you know, will enjoy it.
I don't think I knew at the time that it was going to be what it was.
All of a sudden, the last 6 months, I have kids from about 9 to about 15 coming up to me. They don't mention 8 is enough at all. They don't even know about it. It's all they talk, you King Roland from Spaceballs. In other words, that film has become a cult thing with young kids. They love it.
College campuses, dorm rooms, they watch it 8, 10 times, you know, on a weekend. And then I thought, wow, this movie is, of all the movies that I've done, really like a virus got in people's brains and they couldn't get rid of it.
It's all about the timing or the era or publicity, whatever, but people that come up to me now today, that's what I love. I mean, I never would have dreamed that all these years later, you know, I'd be signing Princess Vespa pictures or autographs or being reminded of lines that I had in the movie.
I know that in my area, people look at it 10 and 15 years later and say, you know what? The work that we did then in 1986 and 1987 holds up today.
A lot of kids, little kids who see it, have no regard for its satiric aspects. They don't care that it's making fun of anything. They like the story, and that's what good satire is.
It's become a big cult film for children. Kids to this day grab me on the street and say, oh, Spaceballs, Spaceballs. And I always say, no, just my voice. And then oh, hell with it. Yeah, Spaceballs.
Hang on, Buffalo, we're gonna make space tracks.
My biggest video sales, you would think that it would be Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. But the two movies are Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and Spaceballs. And that's because of young people. Kids love it, you know, and adults get it. The experience was great. We had a wonderful bunch of folks, talented people, great cast. It was a great, great experience. So may the Schwartz be with you.
There's a time to think, and there's a time to act. And this, gentlemen, is no time to think. We'll have one more round, and then we'll go. Chester?
I couldn't say hi to John without hugging him.
He's a big, heavy man, and yet he had that energy.
Free and silly, but like a child silly, you know, like a giggle.
All the things that he brought to every role, which is you just loved him and you cared about him.
You wanted him to be your next door neighbor or your friend.
He was supportive, he was funny, he was positive about everything.
He was one of the best. I loved him.
He was a remarkable human being.
John Candy never really got over the death of his father when he was 5 years old. He said later that it left a big sort of hole in his heart. Television provided a sort of alternate universe for him. He would never have auditioned for Second City. He was tricked into it by his friends. But there was no question from the beginning of his career that he was going to become a Hollywood star.
Do you think there's something about your training up there in Toronto that makes it different?
I think it was probably just the time for us, you know, with being involved with Second City at the time. Improvisational theater was sort of a common blood that we all shared, you know, the work that we were doing. It was that whole period. It was an incredible time. And when Saturday Night Live started, the theater owners of Second City got frightened that they were going to get raided and everybody would leave ship, so we created SCTV.
Being on SCTV really gave John and his colleagues on that show a tremendous amount of creative freedom. Things that you could do on TV that you could never do on stage. The Schmeggy Brothers just became sort of a regular, hilarious staple of SCTV about polka-playing brothers.
Give us a Schmeggy.
And then we'd like to thank you for letting me give the card to you people.
He created a fantastic range of characters. This was really the beginning of the big ride for John. Splash was Candy's big breakthrough because it gave him a wonderful role in an extremely successful, enjoyable movie that had a huge mainstream audience. John's genius was always bringing something alive once you had the germ of an idea, that he could take it further and that nobody knew where he was going to go with it, including him.
There's a scene when we're in the Winnebago and, you know, it's John Candy and Bill Pullman and myself, and we were sitting there for a long time and they're setting up and John's going on about something. I mean, he just goes off on these, like, riffs.
Riffs that he would just break into because John was always performing. He was performing for everybody all the time.
And your gut is killing because you're laughing so hard.
Bill Pullman would say, "What the hell is that?" You know, he would point out there. And, you know, John Candy would torture him and say, "Where? What? I don't see anything. I just see that blue thing hanging there."
John was the perfect guy to to be paired with, because he would be like a good Mog should be, very protective, you know, and he would stick up for me.
1 million space bucks! We'll be able to pay off Pizza the Hut! Give me paw!
He was so nice. He was so friendly and warm.
There was no attitude. There was no star trip he was ever on. He was simply one of the guys.
A very generous performer. We did 2 benefits together, and extremely generous to the other person. He gave you the chance to do your laughs, to do your breath.
It's not, well, I can do this, and I will do this, and I will do this. It's more we. It's collective. Let's, you know, this would be funny. I won't say that line, you will.
I think you always wanted to be recognized as a more complete, versatile actor, which I think he really was. Comedians have an emotional sensitivity.
This isn't a set, is it?
Delirious was an interesting script, almost a James Thurber kind of thing about a guy who gets somehow dropped down into the middle of his own soap opera. There were fringe benefits for Candy because he worked with some people who became very good friends of his. Tom Mankiewicz, the director, and Merrill Hemingway, who was in it.
This particular character in this film is a lovable guy. Do you ever wish someday down the road you're going to get a role that makes you a real meanie?
Yeah, I just took one on, as a matter of fact. It's funny you mention that with Oliver Stone in the JFK movie. He'll be coming out playing Dean Andrews, who was the attorney for Clay Shaw, who was not such a nice person. So that's a nice little switch for me. And I mean, I was flabbergasted that Oliver called and said, would you do this? So, yeah, I think it was Woody Allen who said that when you're doing comedy, you're always sitting at the children's table. And for Candy, it was important to do things like Only the Lonely and JFK.
Good Time Johnny. A lot of his friends called him Good Time Johnny. Dan Aykroyd used to call him. And he was always out for a good time. We shot Once Upon a Crime in Monte Carlo.
The woman is a compulsive liar. She's only saying that to protect me. Because, in fact, my wife at the hour of the crime was in the arms of another man. And that man, Mr. Inspector, is the real murderer of Madame Van Dugen.
Alfonso de la Peña.
Alfonso!
We were in Monte Carlo about 3 weeks or so. So John decided that he was going to treat his sort of close crew to a boat ride. So he hired this 60-foot yacht. He stocked it with food. He had this amazing lobster seafood lunch catered, champagne. It was a great treat. John was always doing something like that for friends and crew. He was a generous man.
Just a sweetheart. I mean, just a real sweet, kind man.
Wagons East was a tragedy and a fiasco, and there was a movie that Candy shouldn't have done and didn't want to do, but he had a contract. And of course, someone in his physical condition, being 100 pounds overweight and having serious health problems, should not have been going up into the mountains in Mexico where this film was being shot. This was not a good combination.
It was actually, the day we heard about it, I was doing a little movie that Jim Belushi was in. He and I heard about it at the same time, and we just hugged each other and we cried. We just couldn't believe that he was dead.
When I first heard about it, it seemed so impossible to me. He seemed so filled with living and life and joy.
He was fun to be around. We worked well together and always had a lot of laughs together, a lot of fun working together. He was a partner. He was one of a kind.
John Candy's funeral in Los Angeles was a big deal. It was a Catholic funeral. Then a couple of weeks later, there was a memorial service at a church in Toronto for, Toronto folk who could not be in LA, and Catherine O'Hara gave a very moving eulogy.
We did SCTV together. When we all tried to come up with opening credits that would somehow tell the audience exactly what we were trying with the show to say about TV, it was John who said, why don't we just throw a bunch of TVs off a building?
Haven't we met?
Perhaps. And perhaps we'll meet again.
I think John Candy is remembered by anybody who cares about comedy and has a TV or a VCR. The great characters he created on SCTV are in reruns constantly, so he's always being rediscovered there. And his movies are both on television and in the video shops. He created his own universe. Candy had sort of a double attitude to his mortality. On the one hand, there was this constant kind of resolve to do better and to exercise and all of that. But on the other hand, there was an attitude that maybe there was nothing he could do about it. He had this metabolism, he had this family history, he had a father who died of a heart attack around the same age. So there was an element, I think, in his whole life and personality of whatever's gonna happen will happen, let's just have a good time while we're here. Let's enjoy the moment.
Beginnings, Tom, beginnings. At the time, in my back pocket, I had an outline, or an idea anyway, for a movie, and it was called Spaceballs.
It wasn't called Spaceballs originally, but it was...
What did we call it originally?
Originally, when you called me about it, first of all, we met around 1970, and you said, you know, you've got to work on a movie with me.
Yeah, and then 10 years later.
Would you like to? And I said, yeah, here's my phone number. So for 14 years, I sat by the phone. Finally, Mel called.
I finally called.
He called. But anyway, it was called, when you first started, it was called Planet Moron.
Planet Moron, I remember that.
Yeah, and then we were meeting and we were talking, and we had started doing an outline of Planet Moron, and we heard that there was some kind of British low-budget movie called Morons from Outer Space. So we said, we got to get another title. So it was with Ronnie Graham. You and I were having lunch at 20th Century Fox, and you said, well, you can't use Planet Moron, but you said, I think the first word should be space anyway.
Space anything.
Space anything. So let's go through the alphabet.
And then I think I spilled something on me, and I said, balls. And then Ronnie said, that's it, Spaceballs.
So there was
the
basic idea.
Something like
that. The idea was, we'll go through the alphabet. We'll start at A, we'll work and see where we're in space. So we're in space A, Spaceballs, you said.
Right,
that's at the end. We don't have to go to C.
Yeah, and then we thought of, Spaceballs would be cute because they'd all wear these balls as helmets, white helmets.
Which they did do.
And they would be aggressive, which would work into the title. And then we came up with a great idea for a premise for a space movie. At the time, Star Wars had been out 10 years, and maybe there were 2 Star Wars by then.
3 even. Yeah.
It was the only genre I hadn't covered, right?
That's about it.
I covered the West in Blazing Saddles, the horror film with Young Frankenstein, and it was like an untouched, beautiful, virgin field for me to soil.
Mel goes back, from the show of shows, working with people in a room, a bunch of writers, and whoever shouts the loudest gets a line.
Yeah.
And we got into that spirit of that kind of talk writing, and the girl would write something down and say, how about, and we said, do we say that? No, cut that out,
Yeah.
And that's, page by page, it was built that way. You like to start at the very beginning, scene 1, and work through.
Yeah, I don't like outlines, really.
Yeah.
I sometimes work from outlines, but I don't like outlines. I like to get a sense of where the story should go.
Right.
Start at the beginning and get very detailed and very busy immediately, which is not the normal process for writing. To me, nothing works unless the audience really understands the premise. So in the early scenes, literally the first scene, and I could teach this, I could teach it with the producers, because when Bialystok meets Bloom, you get the premise. Bloom is a little accountant. Bialystok is a failed producer. He's done nothing but failures. Bloom says, casually, he says, you can make more money with a flop than you could with a hit.
How?
Yeah.
That how is the whole play.
And then we take the time right at the beginning to explain in detail. If you raise a lot more money than you need and you write or produce a flop, then the IRS and your investors don't care because they've lost their money.
Right.
But you've got to raise 100 times, actually 1,000%, right? Was that in the producers? It's 1,000%?
Yeah, 1,000%.
So exposition is critical because without information, it's just a series of picaresque or comedy adventures. And sometimes those things work and sometimes they don't. But with information.
Well, in Spaceballs, we begin with the information about that the Spaceballs are running out of air.
What's our plot?
Well, it's simple. Spaceballs have used up all of their precious air.
These are bad guys.
And these are bad guys.
They're aggressors.
And there's a beautiful big planet. Planet Druidia has enough air.
Planet Druidia.
Druidia. They're going to steal Planet Druidia's air, and there's 10,000 years of great air, fresh air, and the Planet Druidia is locked in some kind of sealed shield that you have to get the combination to. So they're searching for this combination, which later turns out to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the secret combination.
I know. And President Scrooge, who I play, says, wow. Instead of saying, what a dumb, stupid combination, it says, wow, what a coincidence. I have that same combination on my luggage. So he's an asshole. But
Right.
anyway, it all
He's
works.
a Spaceball and an
But what I'm
asshole.
saying is that we work in a detailed sense from the beginning because the beginning carries most of the explanation or the exposition or the storyline. And,
Right.
and
So
without
they know
that,
what you're talking about.
and without that, you're lost. But if you have a very strong little plot to begin with, then you can go astray or go awry, as Bobby Burns would say.
Right, but we have
come back.
we have Colonel Sanders tell us all to Dark Helmet in the first scene in the spaceship, and then Dark Helmet turns to the audience and says, "Did you get that?"
Yes.
After he's
Yeah.
done about 3
And-
sentences of exposition.
Exposition is critical.
Yeah.
And without exposition, it's as old-fashioned as cavemen who have had a hunt, and maybe they lost Maishi because the great big bear that they were trapping to eat stepped on his balls and killed him, and so they tell about this around the
fire,
campfire.
yeah.
And then Og went so and so, and Moog went this way, but Maishi got under the and it got his balls crushed. And and they all laugh. Yeah. But that's telling the story. It goes back to telling the story of the day.
Yeah.
In a repast of cooked bear meat or something.
But what we found in Spaceballs, and what you did in a lot of other pictures, we make the exposition funny.
We got caught up in the fairy tale aspect, didn't
Yeah,
we?
we kept
and we
that.
actually made it
Our own
more of a
fairy tale.
fairy tale, more of a kind of Disney-ish.
Right.
With Dick Van Patten becoming this kind of
Right, in the
Disney-ish king,
exactly in the kind of idyllic world of Planet Druidia, as opposed to the outer space world. They didn't have that in Star Wars.
Why did we say Druidia?
We were working that she could say she was Druish.
Ah.
Right. And so
All we need is a Druish princess.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So we
So
worked. That's why we said Druidia. I was
Right.
wondering because it should have been Arcadia. Which
or whatever. Yeah, it could have been, but
Yeah.
Druidia was really good. And it's the Druids. It's sort of like an old.
The Druids are an
Yeah.
old Celtic
So it's sort
myth
of,
or something. Right?
So it fit into the romance of it all. But
And we had somebody that she didn't want to marry.
oh, right.
She had
The bored prince. The
bored prince,
The
right.
boring and bored prince. Yeah.
So she got into her. Was it we called
It was
it a
a
Mercedes?
We called it a Mercedes, right? Fully loaded.
Fully loaded
She
Mercedes.
took off in the
right.
Mercedes.
And escaped. And then we wrote a nice little story, as I remember, watching it again, that Lone Star is called by the king and says, I'll give you anything if you save my daughter, and then immediately starts bargaining, And at the end he says, well, if you could get back the Mercedes spaceship, that would be nice too,
Right.
That's an old grandmother story. You're not getting a spaceship back? Let me explain.
Oh, yeah.
There's an old Jewish grandmother on a beach. It's a classic little, and she's walking with her little grandson. And they walk too close to the ocean, and suddenly a huge wave tears the little grandson from her hand, and takes him into the sea, and he's lost. She can't find him. He's gone. He's gone into the sea, and he doesn't surface, and she crashes to her knees on the beach, and she says, "Oh, God, please, please, I'll do anything. I'll send my little grandson back to me. Send my little grandson. He's such a nice boy. Please save him for me. Oh, God, oh, God." And suddenly, and in answer to her prayers, the next wave, plop, the little boy goes flying back from that wave onto the beach again. Perfectly fine. Takes his grandmother's hand and begins walking again, and she says, "Oh, God, thank you, Lord, thank you." By the way, he had a little red cap. So if you spot that, you know.
Right.
So I mean, so that was the genesis of the Dick Van Patten joke. By the way, she had a little Mercedes, you know, fully loaded. If we could find that one too, we'd get it back, you know.
Right.
So I mean, what we're saying is that there are roots, you know. Very little is completely original, you know. But writing anything is like little bits, tiny little bits of coral. They're infinitesimal at the beginning. You can't hardly see what coral is made of. But you give it a couple of 100,000 years, maybe a couple of million years, and suddenly you've got Hawaii. I mean, there's a mountain, there's an island. So jokes are built on folk tales and, you know.
Or just little observations. I mean, in Spaceballs, there's a door that says, "No unauthorized personnel allowed to enter." Or authorized. Right.
Yeah, we just went a little too far.
A little
right?
further.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody could.
We enjoyed writing that.
That kind of joke is
we
just
enjoyed.
fun.
I enjoy writing with Tom because he's a very funny guy. Everybody thinks it's myth. It's a myth. Everybody thinks, well, Tom, he's the Irishman, you know, and Mel is the crazy Jew belly comic, you know, belly laughter, and he does. Not true. It's not true. Tom comes up with very funny belly laugh jokes. And I come up once in a while with some very good exposition or some very good structure, you know.
The smartest jokes from Mel's usually intellectual.
Please, really. You're right, but please,
right.
Please.
But you know, the little references to Dostoevsky and stuff like that people don't even realize.
Well, we do it for ourselves, you know.
Well, we do it for ourselves.
It doesn't hurt anything if they don't get it.
Yeah.
However, every once in a while, we will think something, you know, works on paper, and then you play it, and you read it, and you know, and it's flat as a pancake. It doesn't work. And then either you say, shoot it and we'll cut it later, or you say, let's break for 5 minutes and see, you know, stop the cameras rolling and see if we can rescue it.
On Spaceballs, we were all there, Ronnie Graham and Mel directing, and we would stand around, we would look at all the takes on the monitor and then talk.
Yeah. Ronnie Graham was the third part of the triumvirate, the writing triangle. And Ronnie Graham was a bit of a genius. And he was a nervous wreck and a bit of a pain in the ass. And he would make a lot of trouble.
He was our pain in the ass. He was fun.
But we loved him, and we miss him. I don't believe in an ever after. I really don't. I think when you die, it's just quiet, you know. But if there is an ever after, if there is a heaven, then certainly Ronnie Graham, you know, God would have certainly got him there to amuse him, you know.
Very witty, very
funny, very witty. Adorable. I met him first when Ronnie Graham and I met when I was in Philadelphia doing a show for one of Eddie Cantor's daughters, for Marilyn Cantor. The name of the show, it was a review called Curtain Going Up. And in that review, I wrote a sketch called Of Fathers and Sons. Again, it's kind of a takeoff
I know that sketch.
of Turgenev, but it was really a satire of Death of a Salesman. And Ronnie Graham and Leonard Sillman, it was Leonard Sillman's New Faces of 1952 that was being done.
Right.
Saw this crazy sketch, and they liked it. And with very few changes, we were dying, and we were never going to get out of Philadelphia, but they were on their way to New York. So I asked Marilyn, you know, is it all right if we take the sketch over to Sillman? She said, fine. And so I met Ronnie Graham, who wrote most of the material for New Faces of 1952.
And now he wrote the opening song.
He wrote the opening song, and he wrote many songs, Penny Candy, and he wrote Miss Logan for Robert Clary. And I fell in love with Ronnie, and I said, this guy is good, and he thought I was good. And then, so we were doing New Faces of 1952, and it was a hit. It was actually a very big hit on Broadway. But everybody waited for Eartha Kitt, because she was the big star.
Right.
And everybody waited for Paul Lynde and Alice Ghostley and all these people that were in New Face of 52. Nobody waited for Ronnie Graham. And he was the last one to come out of the stage door. But I'd wait for him every night so we could have a beer and talk. And he would do this crazy thing. He would push the stage door open and say, give me a break. I got to live too. You know, you're human beings just like I am. Get away from me. Get away. You know, he'd make him believe there were 1,000 autograph fans, you know. He'd make believe for 10 minutes and then we'd go have a drink, you know, every night. And he was a delicious, wonderful, adorable, funny guy. And
for a number of years he wrote MASH.
He did write. He wrote
So
MASH with Larry
He was a
Kilgore.
good, solid comedy writer.
We'll miss him, and he is the third missing
Yeah,
writer
he was Spaceballs.
on Spaceballs.
Yeah.
We want you to know about it. He was a terrific actor, and he did little bits in many movies. In Spaceballs, he played a space priest for us.
He did the wedding.
And he did the wedding, and he was very, you'll see for yourself, he's very, very funny.
By the way, I'm in Spaceballs for about 11 seconds.
Okay, Tom, where are you in Spaceballs?
When they return to planet Druidia and
Right.
she rushes back to the king, there's the king's minister standing there in a long gown from the Camelot costume set. Stood there all day in about 100-degree heat in that big thing. That was my big moment.
Did you wear a hat?
I wore a hat.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I'm on camera. You promised me this shot. I remember, Mel. I'm on camera with my own close-up for about 10 seconds.
I try to cut it
It had
out.
nothing to do with the
I try to
story.
cut it out, but your children
My
were
children
tugging
were
at my
right. Their tears.
my legs. And they wouldn't let me walk. And they said, please leave Daddy in the movie.
It's my little Hitchcock moment.
So you're in.
Yeah, and I'm in.
Forever and ever, if you buy the DVD of Spaceballs.
Look for this face.
Look, look for the minister.
The minister, just in the last reel, I guess, somewhere.
What makes you want to work with other writers? And even after having done a job with them, done a movie with them, what makes you continue to work with them? You know, because often it's a very emotional relationship, and writers it's like a marriage, and you do have squabbles and you do have terrible quarrels, and for you to go on and do another project, and Tom and I have done many together, betrays a modicum of mutual affection and respect.
Well, I have such huge admiration for you, Mel.
I
It's
have too.
incredible. And right,
For me,
but
yeah, no.
But you know, and what the great thing about working with you is that when I come in the morning, I know that somewhere during the day you're going to say something so funny I'm going to fall down on the floor.
Believe me, it's life or death when you're writing, you know, and these movies come out, and if they don't make any money, you don't work again. So it's...
Well, you spend hours and hours. It's true. In the last few years, I spent more time with you than with my wife, practically. We're always together.
Well, mostly in bed. I know you don't sleep with your wife, but you love hugging me. No, we're kidding.
No.
But the truth is...
8 hours a day.
The truth is that when you're a writer yourself, and you're directing, and I directed a lot of movies, I like the writers on the set, I like the writers near me, close to me, and I like the writers actually arguing or protesting or voting on a scene. And years ago it was very difficult because we didn't have the little television camera that
which makes a big difference. Yeah.
recorded the scene. Now you do a scene and there's a television camera attached to your normal camera, and it records the scene, and then we all sit around and we see for ourselves whether or not what we intended is working, or whether or not it stinks, or we have to do it again, or and the only, I'm not interested in no offense, I'm not interested in the cameraman's opinion ever, or the assistant director's opinion ever. I'm not interested in anybody on the set's opinion of the art of the scene, but I do bow to the opinions of my fellow writers.
Right.
Because they had a vision, they had a dream in their minds, they knew a projection of what it should be, and if it's there, they vote yes, and if it isn't there, we do it again. So That's, I'm being I'm a little too honest. I want you to trim this so that if I sound arrogant and stupid and, you know, and you think I'm hurting any feelings, leave it in. Leave it in.
It's back and forth. There is a kind of shadow marriage in a writing collaboration when you spend many hours together. We never did. We always talked about doing another Spaceballs, and another full movie.
Well, we do have a title.
We have the title in the movie.
What's the title?
Yoda says, "See you again, God willing, in Spaceballs 2: The Search for More Money."
The Search for More Money.
Right.
Now, that's a good title.
Yeah, right.
Spaceballs 2: The Search for More Money.
Right. And we, of course, in Spaceballs, we have all the big merchandise.
Yeah. We were very brave. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
That we weren't, you know, that the industry didn't come down on our heads for making fun of them, you know.
Merchandise.
For telling the truth about merchandising being more important than the art of the movie.
Yoda pulls out the favorite little toy that's this flamethrower, but the kids love this one.
Merchandising. Shh, the kids love this one. Yeah. I see on your left elbow, down below your left elbow, is Greg, sitting there like an elf, waiting to ask some kind of, you know, to move on to other aspects.
So you mean this conversation is just the two of us?
No, it's not. You know, there are cameras here.
Oh.
And there are all kinds of Gentiles and things and olives, and there's all kinds of stuff around here, you know.
Who knew that?
Yeah. You don't want me to go this way, right? If you can avoid it. We can put. Is this too much? You can tell me.